The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where decisions were made that changed lives forever. I remember noticing the sound of my own footsteps echoing down the long hallway as I walked toward Courtroom 3. Each step felt heavier than the last, like my body already knew what my mind was trying to avoid. My divorce hearing. The words didn't feel real yet, even though I had repeated them in my head 100 times on the drive there. Divorce. 16 years of marriage reduced to a single word. I paused outside the courtroom doors, my hand hovering over the cold metal handle. For a brief moment, I considered turning around, walking away, pretending none of this was happening, but reality doesn't wait for courage. So I pushed the door open. The room was quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, just tense, like everyone inside was holding their breath. The judge sat elevated behind his bench, unreadable. Lawyers whispered to one another, their voices low and practiced. Strangers filled the gallery, faces blank, unaware that they were about to witness the final unraveling of a family. I took my seat. Across the room sat my husband. No, my soon-to-be ex-husband. He looked composed, confident even. His suit was perfectly pressed, his posture relaxed. If someone didn't know our story, then they might think he was the victim here, calm, collected, wounded by circumstance. I couldn't bring myself to look at him for long. My hands trembled as I folded them in my lap, fingers twisting together the way they always did when I was anxious. I stared at the floor, tracing invisible patterns in the carpet, silently begging my heart to stop pounding so loudly. This was it. The end. Behind me, I felt a presence before I heard it. My daughter Layla. She sat in the back row, her school bag resting at her feet, her hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She looked so small in that big room, too small to be here, too young to witness her parents tearing each other apart in front of the strangers. She was only 15. Her eyes met mine for a brief second. I tried to smile, to reassure her that everything would be okay, but my lips wouldn't cooperate. All I could manage was a weak nod. Layla didn't smile back. She looked serious, focused, like she was preparing herself for something. I assumed she was just nervous. I had no idea she was carrying a secret powerful enough to stop the room cold. As the judge called the court to order, my chest tightened. My thoughts raced back over the years. Late nights, silent dinners, arguments whispered so the children wouldn't hear. I remembered all the times I convinced myself things would get better, all the excuses I made, all the moments I ignored because facing the truth felt harder than living inside it. Today, all of it would be judged. I didn't know yet that this hearing wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about the truth finally demanding to be seen. And it was about to come from the one voice no one's expected. The judge's voice cut through the room, calm and practiced, as he called the case to order. Everyone sat down. My heart refused to slow. It beat hard against my ribs, each thump reminding me that this was no longer just my life being discussed. It was being evaluated, measured, and decided by strangers. My husband's lawyer stood first. He was a tall man with a confident posture, the kind of person who spoke as if every word had already been agreed upon. He straightened his tie, glanced briefly at his notes, and then looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is unfortunately one of emotional instability and neglect." The words hit me like ice water. I felt my breath catch. He didn't look at me when he said it. He spoke as though I were an object, an idea, something to be explained away. He continued smoothly, describing a version of me I barely recognized. A woman who was distant, A wife who was cold. A mother who was too consumed with her own emotions to care properly for her family. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream that I had given up my career so I could raise our child. That I stayed up nights when Layla was sick. That I cooked, cleaned, planned, supported, until there was nothing left of me. But I stayed seated. Because every time I tried to defend myself in the past, I was told I was overreacting. The lawyer shifted to custody. He claimed my husband had been the stable presence in Layla's life, that he was patient, gentle, that he had endured years of emotional strain in silence, hoping I would return to the woman I once was. I felt my hands tighten into fists. Across the room, my husband nodded occasionally, his expression carefully controlled. He didn't look angry. He didn't look cruel. He looked reasonable. And that terrified me. I glanced toward the judge, trying to read his face. He listened intently, taking notes, his expression neutral. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. The lawyer finished with a final blow. "We believe," he said calmly, "that remaining in the mother's care would be emotionally damaging for the child." Emotionally damaging? I felt something inside me crack. I looked back at Layla. She was sitting very still. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were clenched in her lap. She wasn't looking at me or at her father. She was staring at the floor. Shame flooded me. Had I failed her without realizing it? When it was my lawyer's turn, she stood and spoke with passion, but the room already felt tilted against me. Facts were presented, timelines, logical arguments. But facts don't always win against confidence. As the judge listened, my thoughts drifted back over the years. Every argument that ended with me apologizing just to keep the peace. Every time I doubted my own memory. Every moment I told myself, maybe it really is my fault. The hearing felt less like a search for truth and more like a performance. And my husband was playing his role perfectly. Just as the judge glanced at the clock, preparing to call for a short recess, something shifted in the room. I felt it before I saw it. A movement behind me. A chair scraping softly against the floor. Then a voice, quiet, shaking, but unmistakably clear. "Your Honor, may I say something?" The courtroom froze. I turned slowly. Layla was standing. And in that moment I realized this story was no longer mine alone. For a moment, no one moved. Layla stood there, her chair pushed slightly back, her hands clenched at her sides. She looked impossibly small compared to the towering walls of the courtroom, yet something about her presence felt powerful, like a quiet force no one had prepared for. The judge lifted his gaze, surprised. The lawyers froze mid-motion. Whispers died instantly. Even the air in the room felt heavier. My first instinct was panic. No, not her. I half rose from my seat, my heart racing. This wasn't her fight. She was a child. She shouldn't have to carry the weight of adult failures, especially not in a place like this, surrounded by strangers and judgments. "Layla," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Sit down." She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead toward the judge, wide but steady. There was fear in them, yes, but also determination. The kind that comes from being pushed too far for too long. My husband turned sharply in his seat. "Layla," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This isn't the right time." Something about his tone made my stomach drop. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Young lady," he said gently, "this is a legal proceeding. What is it that you want to say?" Layla swallowed hard. "I know," she replied. That's why I need permission to show something." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "Show something?" My lawyer turned toward me, confusion written across her face. I shook my head slowly. I had no idea what Layla was talking about. My heart pounded louder with every second. The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Go on." Layla reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking now, just slightly, but she held it firmly, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "This phone," she said, her voice trembling, "has videos on it." My husband stiffened. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, the sudden tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened. "What videos?" he asked quickly, a sharp edge creeping into his voice. Layla finally looked at him, and in that look I saw something that broke my heart. Fear. Not of the courtroom, not of the judge, but of her own father. "I started recording 2 years ago," she said softly. "I didn't know why at first. I just felt like I needed proof, in case no one believed me." A chill ran through me. 2 years. All this time, while I thought I was protecting her. The judge's expression changed. His voice grew more serious. "Proof of what exactly?" Layla took a deep breath. "Of what really happened in our house." The room went completely silent. My husband stood up abruptly. "Your Honor," he said, his calm finally cracking, "this is inappropriate. She's a child. She doesn't understand." The judge raised his hand. "Sit down." The authority in his voice left no room for argument. My husband hesitated, then slowly sat back down. Layla's fingers hovered over her phone screen. Her breathing was uneven now. I could see tears gathering in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. I stood up despite myself. "Layla," I said gently, stepping forward, "you don't have to do this." She turned toward me then. Her voice broke. "I do, Mom, because if I don't, they'll think you're lying." Something inside me shattered. She turned back to the judge. "May I play the video?" The judge looked around the courtroom, then nodded once. "You may." Layla connected her phone to the courtroom screen. As the display flickered to life, my husband's face drained of color. The first frame appeared, and before a single word was spoken, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The screen flickered once, then twice. And suddenly, our living room appeared, familiar and painfully ordinary. The couch we bought together, the coffee table with a small crack on one corner, the yellow lamp that never quite worked right. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I heard his voice. Sharp, angry, unfiltered. "What did you do all day?" The voice snapped from the speakers. "Nothing? That's what I thought?" A collective intake of breath rippled through the courtroom. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. The video was grainy, clearly recorded in secret. The date and timestamp glowed faintly in the corner of the screen, nearly 2 years ago. The camera angle was low, as if the phone had been tucked into a bag or hidden on a shelf. I watched myself appear on the screen. Tired, smaller, shrinking into myself. "I was with Layla," my recorded voice said quietly. "She wasn't feeling well." He laughed. Not a gentle laugh, not even an amused one. A cold, mocking sound. "You always have an excuse," he said. "You're useless. Do you know that?" The courtroom froze. My lawyer's pen slipped from her hand. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." I felt heat rush to my face, not from anger but from humiliation. Hearing those words out loud, in front of strangers, felt worse than any argument ever had behind closed doors. The video continued. Another clip. Same room, different night. The sound of a door slamming echoed through the speakers, loud enough to make several people flinch. "Don't talk back to me," he shouted. "You're lucky I put up with you." The judge's face darkened. My husband shifted in his seat, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The confident man from earlier was gone. In his place sat someone tense, exposed, and afraid. The video cut again. This time, it was the kitchen. Layla's voice, smaller, younger, spoke from behind the camera. "Dad, please stop yelling." My breath caught painfully in my chest. "No one asked you," he snapped. "Go to your room." The sound of hurried footsteps followed. A door closed softly. Then silence. The courtroom was completely still. The judge leaned forward, his elbows resting on the bench, his eyes never leaving the screen. Another clip started. My husband was on the phone, pacing the living room. He didn't know he was being recorded. "Yeah," he said, his voice suddenly lighter, smoother. "She's so dramatic. I can't wait to be free of her." A pause. Then a smile. "No, baby, she has no idea." Gasps filled the room. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. My husband's lawyer stood abruptly. "Your Honor." "Sit down," the judge said sharply, without looking away from the screen. The video continued, one clip bleeding into the next. Him belittling me. Him threatening to leave if I didn't behave. Him laughing while I cried quietly in the background. Each second felt heavier than the last. Layla stood frozen beside the screen, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to pull her into my arms and apologize for every moment she had to witness this alone. The final clip began. The hallway camera angle shook slightly. Layla's voice whispered, scared. "Dad, please don't." His response was calm, but terrifying. "If you tell your mother about this," he said slowly, "I'll make sure she regrets it." The video ended. The screen went black. For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. Not the judge, not the lawyers, not even my husband. The silence was deafening. And then, somewhere in the room, someone began to cry. I realized it was me. The silence after the video felt endless. It pressed down on the courtroom like a heavy weight, making it hard to breathe. No one moved. No one dared to speak. Even the smallest sound, the rustle of fabric, the scrape of a chair, felt too loud. Layla stood frozen near the screen, her shoulders shaking as quiet sobs escaped her. She hadn't turned around yet. It was as if she was afraid that if she looked back, she might lose the courage that had carried her this far. I rushed to her side. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly, as though I could somehow gather all the pain she had carried for years and pull it out of her. Her face pressed into my chest and I felt her tears soak through my clothes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom." My heart shattered. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm the one who's sorry. I didn't know. I should have seen it." For years, I had blamed myself for the tension in our home, for the arguments, for the silence, for the way Layla had slowly withdrawn into herself. Watching that video, I realized how blind I had been, how carefully the truth had been hidden from me. The judge cleared his throat. It was a small sound, but it carried authority. Layla stepped back from me, wiping her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. She looked toward the judge again, her expression raw but steady. "Why didn't you tell your mother?" the judge asked gently. Layla took a deep breath. "Because I was scared. she said honestly. He told me it would get worse if I did. And because I didn't want her to feel like it was her fault. My husband's head dropped. The judge turned his gaze toward him, his eyes hard now, no trace of the neutrality he'd worn earlier. "Is that true?" the judge asked. "Did you threaten your child?" My husband's lawyer jumped up quickly. "Your Honor, my client. I asked him," the judge interrupted sharply. "Not you." All eyes turned to my husband. He swallowed, his hands gripping the edge of the table. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. I didn't mean it like that," he muttered. "Things were stressful. I never actually hurt anyone." Layla flinched. The judge's voice dropped, calm but deadly serious. "Emotional abuse is harm," he said. "Threats are harm, and involving a child in marital conflict is unacceptable." My lawyer finally spoke. "Your Honor, this evidence directly contradicts the claims made earlier about my client's mental instability and alleged neglect." The judge nodded slowly. "Yes, it does." He turned a page in the file in front of him and then looked back up. "Miss," he said to me, "you have endured behavior no spouse or parent should." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in years, someone in authority believed me. The courtroom felt different now. The energy had shifted. The confidence my husband had carried into the room was gone, replaced by something close to panic. Layla took a step forward again. "There's more," she said quietly. Every head snapped toward her. She held up her phone, her hand shaking once more. "There are messages, voice recordings, dates. I saved everything." My husband looked up sharply. "Layla, stop," he said, his voice strained. "That's enough." The judge raised his hand. "No," he said firmly. "It's not." He turned to Layla. "You've been very brave. Thank you for telling the truth." Layla nodded, tears falling freely now. And in that moment I understood something I never had before. The truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it stands quietly in a courtroom in the voice of a child who refuses to stay silent any longer. The judge leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together, eyes moving slowly from one face to another. The courtroom that once felt hostile now felt alert, awake, as if everyone present understood that they were witnessing something far bigger than a divorce. "This court," the judge began, his voice steady but firm, "has a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable party involved." His gaze settled on Layla. A ripple of emotion moved through the room. Layla stood beside me, shoulders tense but head held high. She looked exhausted, as though years of fear had poured out of her all at once. The judge turned toward my husband. "Earlier," he said, "you presented yourself as a patient and devoted father. What we have just seen tells a very different story." My husband shifted in his seat, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. "This isn't just a matter of marital conflict," the judge continued. "This is a pattern of intimidation, manipulation, and emotional abuse." My husband's lawyer stood again, desperation creeping into his movements. "Your Honor," he said quickly, "we object to the characterization. These recordings were taken without consent and—" "Overruled," the judge said without hesitation. "The welfare of a child outweighs your objection." The words landed like a gavel strike before the actual gavel ever fell. I felt Layla's fingers tighten around mine. The judge flipped through the file once more. "Based on the evidence presented today," he said, "this court cannot accept the claims that the mother is unstable or unfit." I closed my eyes, tears spilling freely. For so long I had been made to doubt myself, my memories, my instincts, my worth as a parent. Hearing those words felt like someone finally lifting a crushing weight from my chest. The judge continued. "In fact," he said, "the evidence suggests quite the opposite." He turned slightly toward my husband. "Your behavior has placed your child in a position of fear. That alone raises serious concerns regarding custody." My husband's face drained of color. "No," he said under his breath. "This is being blown out of proportion." The judge looked directly at him. "Sir," he said calmly, "your daughter was afraid to speak for 2 years. That is not proportion, that is damage." The courtroom remained silent, every ear fixed on the bench. The judge adjusted his glasses. "This court is ordering a full custody evaluation," he announced. "Effective immediately, primary custody will remain with the mother." A quiet gasp filled the room. I felt my knees weaken. Layla looked up at me, disbelief and relief colliding in her eyes. The judge wasn't finished. "All visitation with the father," he added, "will be supervised until further notice. Additionally, the court recommends mandatory counseling focused on anger management and parental responsibility." My husband slumped back in his chair, defeated. For the first time since I had known him, there was no argument left in him. The judge turned toward Layla once more. "You showed remarkable courage today," he said. "You did what many adults struggle to do. You told the truth when it was difficult." Layla nodded silently, tears streaming down her face. I pulled her into my arms again, this time holding her with something new in my heart: hope. As the gavel finally struck, signaling the end of the session, I knew one thing with certainty. This courtroom had not just ended a marriage. It had exposed a lie, protected a child, and opened the door to a future neither of us had believed was possible. And yet, the sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, final and unwavering. For a moment, it felt surreal. The noise had a weight, but it didn't yet feel real. I was still sitting there, clutching Layla's hand, both of us trembling, not just from relief, but from the years of fear and silence that had led to this exact moment. The judge's words replayed in my mind, slow and deliberate. "You showed remarkable courage today." Remarkable courage, not mine, Layla's. It had been her voice that cut through the years of lies and manipulation. Her small hands that held a phone had changed the course of our lives, and as I watched her, I realized just how strong she had become, forced into bravery far earlier than any child should have to be. We walked out of the courtroom together. The hallway felt different now, lighter, as if the walls themselves understood the truth had finally been told. Journalists weren't waiting. Strangers weren't staring. Only quiet acknowledgement lingered in the air. I looked down at Layla. "Are you okay?" I whispered. She nodded, though tears still streamed down her cheeks. "I'm okay, Mom," she said softly. "Because we did the right thing. We told the truth." I held her tighter. "Yes," I whispered back. "We did. And now we can start over." We didn't talk much on the drive home. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't heavy. It was a shared understanding, a bond renewed after years of uncertainty. At home, everything felt different. The rooms we had once shared under tension now felt safe. The living room, once filled with fear, was now filled with quiet laughter. Layla unpacked her school bag and sat on the couch, a small smile breaking through her tears for the first time in what felt like years. I sat across from her, trying to absorb the reality. My daughter was safe. I was being believed. Justice had been done. For months afterward, the changes were gradual but profound. Visits with her father were supervised, as ordered. Counseling sessions began, not just for him, but for us too. Layla and I attended therapy together, speaking about fear, manipulation, and trust. It was exhausting, painful, and necessary. Slowly, we rebuilt what had been broken. And through it all, I learned something I had never realized before. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a child standing up in a courtroom with nothing but a phone and the truth in her heart. And sometimes that courage can save more than just one life. As I tucked Layla into bed one night, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are stronger than you know." She looked up at me, eyes wide and serious. "No, Mom," she said. "We're stronger together." And in that moment, I believed her. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were beginning to heal. The past still lingered in shadows, yes, but it no longer controlled us. We had taken our story back. We had reclaimed our lives. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had thought that was gone forever. Hope. Months have passed since that day in the courtroom. The house feels different now. Not just quieter, but safer. Every corner, every familiar object no longer carries the weight of fear. Layla laughs again. Not the forced smiles of a child pretending everything is okay. Real laughter, bubbling and light. And I watch her and remember, she was always stronger than I gave her credit for. This story isn't just mine, it's hers too. It's about courage, about standing up even when the world seems stacked against you, about the truth finding its way into the light, no matter how deeply it's buried. Sometimes, courage is loud, like a courtroom filled with gasps and whispers. Sometimes it's quiet, like a child holding a phone, trembling but refusing to stay silent any longer. I've learned that abuse doesn't always leave bruises. It can be hidden behind polite words, behind calm smiles, behind the everything is fine masks people wear every day. And heroes? They don't always look strong. Sometimes they are the ones we least expect. Our children, our friends, ourselves, finding strength in the moments when we feel weakest. As I sit here now, holding Layla's hand and watching her draw in her notebook, I realize the power of truth. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that seeks revenge, but the kind that frees, the kind that heals. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this story, it's this. Do not underestimate the courage of the quiet ones. Do not let fear silence you. And do not forget, the truth, no matter how long it takes, has the power to change everything. Our lives are not defined by the pain we endure, but by the courage we summon in the face of it. And sometimes the bravest thing in the world is simply to speak. This story was brought to you by Chronicles of Stories, where voices once silenced finally get heard.